So how do we create engagement virtually? That is the million-dollar question right now, right? I'm seeing that question pop up in groups I'm a part of with authors and speakers all over different forums. And I had this kind of like dust slap moment, like, wow, I've been doing this since 2006. And in case you're having the same questions, I wanted to share a couple of tips about how we create engagement, especially when we're leading virtual panels and roundtable discussions. Because some of the things that we can use to curate a great discussion on, in person on a stage, some of those apply to virtual, but there's things that we need to do differently and think about differently online. So here's 2 tips for you. The first one is to ask specific guided questions of your panelists. So you might be thinking, well, duh, I need to ask specific questions, but no, really, the general open-ended question is going to be the death of your virtual panel. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So let's say I'm leading a discussion around book launch strategies, and I ask the question of a panelist, well, what were some of the strategies that worked really well for your book launch? Well, your panelists, being the generous, awesome people that they are, they're going to be thinking of 10 to 20 things that they want to share with the audience because they're so excited to contribute. But if I change the question to say, so-and-so, one of the things that you did so well with your book launch is around bulk sales. What's one strategy for our audience they can use to do X, Y, and Z? See, I've curated and directed the question in the way that I want to take it, not just for the answer from that panelist, but also thinking ahead to how I want to curate the conversation. So, the thing about it is in person, we can do things like lean in and, use body language to communicate to a panelist like, hey, we need to move things along. But it is up to us as moderators to ask those specific curated questions to help keep our panelists' answers short and to have a curated conversation instead of a series of monologues. So that's the first strategy. Ask specific guided questions. Your second tip for today is to proactively curate the conversation. Again, you might be saying, well, yeah, that's my job. But here's the thing, like in the virtual space, you're flying blind. Even if you're curating a panel on Zoom, we can't rely on some of the body language and context clues that we get in person. I remember back in the days of author teleseminars, and that was when teleseminars were cool. In moderating a panel on a phone line, I couldn't rely on body language or any of those things, not to mention there would oftentimes be conversations between like a Keith Ferrazzi, Tim Ferriss, Chris Anderson, Michael Port, others, that there's a lot of strong personalities there. As the moderator, you have to be able to move that conversation forward. So sure, in your prep call, you can tell your panelists, hey, I need you to be listening for me jumping in, and I'm not cutting you off, but I need to move the conversation forward. Because sure, in the same way that being in person, you can have somebody that takes over the panel, you have to be able to really attune your listening and listen for that micro pause to then say, oh, I love that, great, and so, you have done this, which actually leads to a discussion about why. You have to listen for that space that's going to look like this instead of like this. And it requires both listening skills as well as the courage to jump in and, you're doing your homework about the panelists as well, which helps you knit together the conversation and move it along instead of having someone hijack your panel. So there's so many other things we could talk about, but those are 2 tips for today. If you have additional questions, please put them in the chat below. Also, if you have a virtual panel or roundtable coming up, leave me a note below or send me a DM. I'm happy to hop on the phone with you and share some additional tips and strategies. I love hosting both in-person and virtual panels. It's, part of what I've done for years. And so if I can be of service to you in any way, would love to do that. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.